by. Hello, Heisman.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. Oh, the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. Oh, no, they didn't. Oh, my gracious.
Yep.
How about that?
What a week we have before us. We've got Josh Heupel returning to Norman, the site of a 2000 national championship. We'll talk about Tennessee storming into Norman for the Oklahoma Sooners' first ever SEC game. USC on the road in the Big House. Michigan has a quarterback controversy, an offensive identity crisis, and maybe a whole lot of losses in front of them. We'll talk about the Wolverines and whether or not the Trojans can survive that road test, and a big tilt in the Big 12, amongst other things. Utah on the road at Oklahoma State. Can the Utes get healthy enough to win in Stillwater? We'll break all of that down and much, much more. A week of potential underdogs. I'm calling that. We'll talk about all that right here on the Three Technique, a college football podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and the Jimmies and the Joes. We've traded Trey Reeves tonight for Garrett Turney. One exits, one enters. Garrett, fun week 4 slate in front of us. I'm excited to break this down, man.
Yeah, man, downgrade of the century, right? Get Trey back in here. What am I doing? No, it's good to be back. Obviously, it's been a couple of weeks since I've been on a preview show. It's, that's just, life and job and having a child and stuff like that. But I'll just blame it on the fact that, this is easier for me because I don't have to make as many predictions until I've seen the teams play a couple of times. Now I can look really, really smart and seem like I know what I'm talking about now that I've seen these teams actually out on the field a little bit. So I let you guys fall in the early grenades for me and, blame it on work or something.
That's right. Yeah, we have to take the early lumps as teams figure it out. It's interesting because we get through three weeks of the season and you start to have those assumptions creep in that we know what a team is like, that we've seen the good, bad, and the ugly in just 3 weeks. A lot of times that's not the case. A lot of these teams are not fully baked. And so as we move through these picks, I want to put one just giant disclaimer out there that as I reference the research, the math that I've gone through in preparation for these games, when we throw out stats, right, this team is, 101st in run defense or 16th in passing efficiency. It's obviously a small sample size. So just know that from the outset that we know these aren't, weeks and weeks and months worth of data, but it is a talking point that we have to reference as we go forward into the rest of the season. So anyway, felt like throwing that out there.
Yeah. I mean, look, you have one bust this early in the season. All of a sudden you're 121st in pass defense,
exactly.
Something like that. Or if you're Tennessee and you just, bully, Kent State, then now you're number 1 in offensive scoring. And so it's like, congratulations, you bullied this guy over here. Congrats. We feel good about that, Tennessee.
Yeah, exactly. So, small sample size, but we make of it what we can. And, I feel pretty good about the picks this week. So we'll see if that ages well or not. We've got our 3Tech Big 3 brought to you by Home Field Apparel. You can use our code 3TechPod for 15% off your entire first order. Or if you're a return customer like so many of you are, use the link in our bio and all of our socials at 3TechPod, and you can continue to support the show. If you are new here, as I know a lot of listeners are, a lot of new subs over on the YouTube, on the Twitter, on the Instagram, welcome. We're glad to have you as a part of the Jimmies and the Joes at 3TechPod on all socials. We would really appreciate it if you would hit like and subscribe on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple. Leave us a podcast rating as well. That helps us continue to grow the show as well. Garrett, 3Tech Big 3, our game of the week as we dive into week 4, Tennessee on the road at Oklahoma, the 6:30 p.m. kick on ABC. College Game Day will be there. We agree. This is the game that I think everybody should have their eyes glued to. The Volunteers, when I snagged this line for a run sheet, 7.5-point favorites on the road. I mentioned in the outset, this is the first SEC game for Oklahoma. Josh Heupel's returning to his familiar stomping grounds, a place that once called him brother, where he won a national championship as a quarterback in 2000. He was also fired from Oklahoma as the offensive coordinator almost 10 years ago to the day. The storylines here, Garrett, are rich. They're deep. But under all of it, I think you have one team coming in that feels very composed, very put together, very much on an on-ramp towards title contention of both the conference and maybe the national variety. And on the other hand, you have a home team that has a really good defense, but boy, they are struggling to put together some offense right now. Talk to me about where you're leaning in this game as we kick it off, and we'll break it down from there.
Yeah, man, I'm gonna take Tennessee in this one personally. Tennessee, and I'd take them minus the 7.5.
Mm-hmm.
This might be something towards the end of the segment, but I think Tennessee is probably one of the best teams in the country. And I don't feel particularly like that's a hot take. I know it's the keeper of the hot takes over here, but I don't think that's that hot of a take. Look, early on, I know it's early. Like we just said, the stats don't necessarily matter that much right now because you'd have a couple of things that bust. But look, Tennessee's number one in points per game. They've scored 63.7 a game, and then they're third in opponent points per game at 4.3 per game. That seems like an unfair, unrealistic statistic, but that is where the numbers stand right now. And I don't think that's that much of a coincidence. Yes, I just mentioned like they beat up Kent State, and it's, whatever. That's fine. Congratulations. But I think the thing about that is, Tennessee for a couple of years now has kind of just been like the air it out team and, featuring some running and, obviously some stuff was working a couple of years ago and, they have some, talented receivers, a good quarterback, and then steps down a little bit. And now you got Nico in here and everyone's, focused on Nico and him being the guy, right? He's the savior. He's the guy who's turned the program around. And all I think that he's done is he's made other teams have to respect the pass a little bit. Because he's crazy talented, but it's not like the numbers he's putting up are gaudy necessarily. I'm looking at his stats right now on the season. Through 3 games, he's got a 71% completion rating. That's amazing. He's got 698 yards. He's averaging just 232 per game, which isn't necessarily setting the world on fire or anything. But the big thing is he's not really doing too much in the turnover department. He's not really throwing that many picks. He's thrown a couple, but not that many. And the big story for me is they're running the ball at an insane clip right now. Everybody on that team is committing to running the football, doing a really good job in the run game. I love what it is. And that's kind of the big matchup that I want to look at is the run game versus Oklahoma's kind of, stifling at times. They've definitely held some people down on the defensive side. They boast the linebackers. They got some good talent on that side of the ball. I just think that the Tennessee run game is a nasty 1-2 punch with Dylan Sampson and Deshaun Bishop. And so it just, for me, this is the better team, Tennessee. All the storylines are going to be awesome. It's going to be an awesome crowd in Norman. That's going to be just an awesome environment to see. And I think they're going to be rocking. But I think pretty quickly Tennessee is going to take the air out of the place. And for a little while this year, I think Tennessee is going to be able to name their score. And I think that starts against Oklahoma and Norman. I think they're going to be able to score whatever they want to, as much as they want to, because this is a really, really good, very talented offense. But it does base itself on the run. And when you base yourself on the run, that travels, right? That's the thing we talk about. Running and defense travels. And by the way, and we didn't touch on it too much, but that defense is pretty nasty too. They play some nasty football on that defense. They hit guys hard. They've been doing a lot better stepping up. And so I'm really impressed with Tennessee. I think this is one of the top teams in the conference. And this isn't me fading Oklahoma. This is just me praising Tennessee for what they are and recognize them as one of the better teams in the conference, one of the better teams in the country right now.
Yeah, Tennessee is on fire, no doubt. I'll defend Nico's stats just a little bit. He's only played 2 complete games, right? He played the first half of the opener, the first half of the third game against Kent State, obviously the full game or most of the full game against NC State. So hadn't had to put up gaudy numbers in order for them to win.
And just to be clear, that was the point. I wasn't saying that he wasn't good. I'm saying it's not like Tennessee's scoring a bunch now just because Nico's going off. Like they're doing this as a whole team.
Yeah, very complete team. It's interesting. On the other side, you look at Oklahoma, and their defense is stout. I like what they have there. They've kept their opponents to low point totals overall. But I keep coming back to the struggle of the offense, and it's the offensive line. That storyline has been beaten to death, 6 ways to Saturday. Jackson Arnold, I think, is a fine quarterback, but he's young. He's going to make some mistakes, and behind an offensive line that doesn't give him time to look down the field and complete those big chunk plays, I do worry about their ability to keep up with Tennessee. Tennessee is a 7.5-point favorite for a reason. And in fact, this is the first time that Oklahoma has been more than a touchdown home dog since 1998 against Texas Tech, per ESPN stats and info. You look at what Oklahoma has really struggled to do, and Jackson Arnold, when the chips are down, he's using his legs more than he is his arm. Oklahoma is one of the worst teams in the country through 3 weeks on plays, explosive plays, more than 20 yards down the field. Now, their opponents, nobody too stout defensively, right? They played Temple, they played Houston, and then Tulane, which was easily their best competition that they faced so far. The first 2 weeks against Temple and Houston, Oklahoma was dreadful on third down. So it's an offense that's failed to find some rhythm. And unfortunately, because they haven't dominated anybody of an inferior caliber so far, it's really hard to see a Goliath walk into Norman and say, yeah, I think Oklahoma is going to be able to keep track in a potential shootout. I think the Sooners defense will hold Tennessee back from what they've been putting up, even more than what NC State allowed. But I think late, as that game progresses, as Tennessee's run game continues, like, waves on a rock, just to beat down the doors, that's where I see Tennessee pulling away. I think the Volunteers can win this by 14-17 relatively easily.
I think you're probably right about that, but I'm willing to go a little bit further than that. I don't think this will be particularly close, and I want to give Oklahoma some credit. They have been winning games where not a lot's been going right? And that's hard to do when you have, hey, the pass game isn't working, the offensive line isn't working, we're finding ways to win. That's, to their credit, right? They have to be able to get praise for that a little bit. But the problem is you do reach a different caliber of talent, a different caliber of athlete. And this is just a better coached, better overall system right now at Tennessee than what Oklahoma has in place. And, what Heupel's been able to do at Tennessee, I think is, one of the more underrated stories in college football right now, just because, Tennessee hasn't really broken through at that national level yet, right? They've looked pretty good. Obviously, season derailed by injuries a couple years ago. But, end of the day, I think Tennessee and what they're doing and what they're building is kind of a massive storyline. And so I think, and I said it earlier, I think Tennessee's going to kind of be able to name their score. I think they're going to do what they want to. And I don't think it happens early, right? I don't think that this is a case where early on, they're just going to go out there and go 21-0, right? They're not going to go out there and just straight up, punch them in the mouth a couple times, hit them with the 1-2-3, right? But I could see this being a thing where, halfway through the second quarter, we're talking about time of possession. We're talking about how Tennessee's had the ball the whole time, and the OU defense is getting real tired, and they come back out from the half and may make a couple mistakes, and OU starts to press on offense, they turn the ball over, and then this whole thing just spirals, right? I could see that being the case in this game, and I really do think Tennessee is going to win this game by a whole bunch. I don't think that this is going to be a particularly fun game towards the end, because I think it's going to be one we can all just kind of say, well, Tennessee did their thing. I guess we can check back in with them later. What was the final score? How much did they end up beating by? Oh, 30? Okay. And I think that's going to be how this goes, because unfortunately, like you said, they just Oklahoma doesn't have much on the offensive line. Tennessee plays pretty good defense. Oklahoma hasn't really been able to dominate those lesser teams. And so even though they found ways to win against those lesser teams, it's going to be really hard to find a way to win against Tennessee. And I don't just mean win the game, but also just win individual possessions, win, their battles one-on-one. I think this is going to be a pretty rough scene for Oklahoma, TBH.
Tennessee has the top overall most efficient offense per College Football Insiders and CFBgraphs.com. They also have the second best total defense on the season so far.
Wow.
Their front seven specifically has been really fun to watch. 20 tackles for loss through 3 games, only 4 sacks, but a lot of quarterback pressures, a lot of havoc created on those downs as well. So I've got my eyes on the trenches. We're both on Tennessee minus the 7.5. That'll take us to our second game in our big three. Number 11, USC on the road at number 18, Michigan. The Trojans, 5.5-point favorites in the Big House. This number seems a little low given what we're about to talk about. This is the 2:30 game on CBS. The over-under here is interesting to keep an eye on. 46.5. Vegas is expecting a defensive slugfest. We'll start there, Garrett. USC's offense can certainly get up and go. We saw that through only 2 weeks. They're coming off a very early bye.
Right.
Michigan, on the other hand, is going with Alex Orji at quarterback over Davis Warren, hoping to find some sort of spark on the ground, presumably, because, boy, Orji only has, I think, 7 career passes attempted.
It's not a whole lot, right? He hasn't really shown that he can be a passer. Now, maybe he can. We don't really know because he hasn't really done it. But man, Michigan needs to turn things around on the offensive side. You mentioned off the top that they might have a quarterback controversy. It's not much of a controversy. They don't have very good quarterback play right now. So, at this point, it's just saying, hey, does anybody with the pulse want to stand up and play quarterback for the Wolverines? Can anybody complete a pass? Can anybody run the offense or get this thing down the field? Because, frankly, Davis Warren just hasn't been getting it done. It's not good enough. It hasn't been good enough to put away teams that they should be beating by a lot more. And so, everything we were just kind of saying about Oklahoma a second ago, them not putting away teams, that's extra for Michigan. And, oh, yeah, by the way, got dominated and embarrassed in your own house by the Texas Longhorns, right? Who, obviously they've looked really good, but if you're the Michigan Wolverines, you shouldn't be losing a game at that margin. You shouldn't be getting dominated the way you did against Texas. But at the end of the day, I think for me, Alex Orji has to find a way to develop. He has to find a way to grow as a passer. And maybe that just means, look, you're gonna take your lumps against USC, but you're gonna give him reps, you're gonna give him opportunities, and you're just gonna see what he can do. I don't anticipate this going very well for the Wolverines, and it's also compounded by the fact that Colston Loveland went down with an injury last week. And he is, I think last I checked, still questionable if he's even gonna play. If he does play, we know he's going to give it his all, but he won't be 100%. And so if you give me a not 100% for your main target, the only guy that's been doing anything in your receiving core right now, you take him off the field or you make him, a shell of himself, not 100% version of himself, and you've got a new quarterback who may or may not be able to pass the football. I just don't think the solution for Michigan's offense is on the roster right now. I just don't think that they have something in their locker room that can fix the problem. Now, maybe it can get better. Maybe they can get back to being, semi-respectable, but I don't think it's going to happen this week. And it's not going to happen if they have to get into a situation where they have to keep up with USC, right? If they're having to pass the football a lot, if they're in negative game script where they're having to kind of go and say, hey, we have to catch up. We're down 10, we're down 13, we're down 14, whatever it is. They're going to have to kind of air it out a little bit. And that's probably not what the offense is really built for right now. So, look, I think we're going to learn a lot about USC. They've really exceeded my expectations so far. They've been a lot better than I expected them to be coming into the year. I think they've kind of vaulted themselves up towards the top of the Big Ten Conference, and I think they'll put themselves in position after this game at the top of the conference, to find their way to the conference championship game. I think we're going to learn about how good Miller Moss is because obviously this is still a very good Michigan defense. We're going to learn about just how high he can go. We're going to see him probably make some mistakes, but it's going to be about how he bounces back. So good early test for them and relatively, I think, low stress test for USC because I don't think they're too worried about, Michigan keeping up offensively. So I'm taking the Trojans here and I like the 5.5 number. It seems a little small. I think they're still just respecting how good Michigan's defense is, which I can't blame them for, right? It's still a really good defense. But, Michigan might have to count on some defensive scoring if they want to win this one.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like Michigan's trying to play Iowa football, right? Where their defense carries them. It honestly makes the fact that Iowa can continually win 9-10 games on repeat all that much more impressive because Michigan, if they're not scoring against USC or against teams that can air the football out like a Texas, I just don't see how they're even around really in this game by the half. It feels a little bit like same song, different verse with what the Trojans are going to try and do, with what Lincoln Riley is going to try and do with that Texas game on tape. You mentioned the injury to Colston Loveland. We're waiting to see if indeed he's going to be healthy or not. That would be a huge blow. Michigan, statistically, one of the most anemic offenses in the country right now, Garrett. They're 106th in total offense, and they are 121st in passing. You look then at what the running backs are doing.
That high, honestly.
Yeah. You look at what the running backs are doing, and Donovan Edwards has disappeared so far in these first couple of games. He's just really not been the X factor that everyone
You don't have
assumed he
to
would be.
respect the pass. If you don't respect the
No.
pass, you can just load up the box, play downhill, let the safeties crash or play close to the line of scrimmage. Like it's easy to defend. And especially if it's just the one back, right? Like Donovan Edwards, we think he can be a lead back, but they don't really have that same talent change of pace like he's been the last couple of years. So, it's unfortunate for Michigan, right? This is a program just coming off a national championship, and they're already cratering. No head coach, or not the head coach that you had last year, right? Sherrone Moore doing his best, and quarterback obviously went to the draft, and your starting running back went to the draft, and you had lots of guys drafted on the defense. It's just kind of a tough scene right now for Michigan. Enjoy your banner, right? The banner's still there. It's going to keep waving. And that would be my encouragement to Michigan fans is, while you're sitting at this game and you're watching USC go up and down the field, and you just take a look at that banner and smile to yourself and say, hey, we did it last year. That was fun.
Michigan is going to have to force some turnovers early on. And, we're saying all of this like we're just assuming that USC is going to move the football. We've just seen them in 2 weeks. This is their third game of the season. They looked really good against LSU. They obviously shut out Utah State in their home opener. But to say that Miller Moss is just suddenly this upper echelon quarterback, I think is a little bit of an assumption. So I want to continue to see what the Trojans do offensively. I want to make sure that defense under Danton Lynn is legitimate. I don't know how much we're going to learn about it this week, but 5.5 seems like a very low number. On one hand, it's suspiciously low. And typically when you have those suspiciously close lines, you tend to steer into them and financially prosper from that. But like I said, same song, different verse. To me, I'm going to take USC minus the 5.5 on the road. We'll go to our final big game of the week. Number 11, Utah on the road at number 14, Oklahoma State, 3 p.m. game on Fox. Garrett, the biggest story coming into this game is the status of Cam Rising. Our friends over at the Walk-On Red Shirts, I think their perpetual joke is that Cam Rising is just a universal game time decision, always questionable, no matter what day of the week it is. I need to know what Cam Rising is going to bring, if he's going to be able to play in this game, what level of performance we're going to get. We had a Twitter comment earlier when I put this out as one of the 5 most intriguing games of the week. And the commenter said, this is a game that Cam Rising typically thrives in. I agree, but man, you got to sign up for 60 in order to thrive and beat a team like Oklahoma State. So, I'll lead off on this one. Ollie Gordon on the other side for Oklahoma State, he's looked supremely average this year. Garrett, your fantasy team is not off to the hottest start in the running back department. Ollie Gordon only with 3.48 yards per carry. Pokes are averaging just 112 yards on the ground, which is not normal for what we saw from Oklahoma State once they really got up and rolling last year. Now, in those opponents that they played, South Dakota State, Arkansas, and Tulsa, Arkansas is the 7th best rushing defense through 3 weeks. Whatever that's worth, you got to take that into account. But I do wonder what it really speaks to as far as the Oklahoma State offensive line. They've done really, really well in pass protection so far. They have not given up a sack. Only like 4 tackles for loss, I want to say, that they've given up through the first 3 weeks. So they've done a good job in pass protection. But as far as opening up those holes that Ollie Gordon would love to have, that hasn't happened so much so far this season. It really didn't last year. If you go back and watch the tape, it was really Ollie Gordon, kind of the creator back there, finding holes, trucking over guys, making his own room. That's certainly something that I'm watching. Utah also much better against the run than Oklahoma State is. This game, I think, could come down to who runs the ball better. Oklahoma State's given up 4.4 yards a carry. I texted Trey kind of asking for his pick, seeing where he felt like he was on this game. And he said, man, I don't know how Oklahoma State keeps Utah from getting 6 yards a carry.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to watch the run game there, especially because I think with Cam Rising playing, and I just looked on Twitter, I think he will be playing in this game. He will be starting. And really it's just more of, is he healthy enough to be himself, right? Is he going to feel good enough to play his game? If he is, I think that Utah is going to be able to do what they want to a little bit on offense and, run for whatever they want to. Oklahoma State kind of plays Green Day football. They just say, wake me up when September ends, right? And they just decide that they don't want to play football for the first month of the season. Don't ask them about South Alabama or, Central Michigan, whoever else. There's just a couple of teams that have gotten them in the past when it comes to Septembers. But look, this is an Oklahoma State team that should be playing better than they are in the run game. This is just fact of the matter. Ollie Gordon should be getting a lot more. But, what Oklahoma State's kind of game plan so far this year has been is, hey, they're going to, the opposing defense is going to try to shut down the run. Alan Bowman's got to be the guy. He's got to be the hero, right? That's been what the name of the game has been for Oklahoma State. So far, Bowman's actually done a pretty good job of being the hero and finding a way to move the football. And so shout out to him. I just think that the Utah defense is way more talented than anything that they faced so far. I think Whittingham and co, they're going to be a lot better in Stillwater than other people have. I think that they're obviously going to run a much better defense than even Arkansas did a couple weeks ago. So, look, I think that they're going to do a good job shutting this down. I don't think that they're going to need as many guys to stop the run, so I think they can commit a couple more guys to the pass. And look, I'm a big fan of Utah, obviously, enjoying what the Utes are doing. Also got a little soft spot for Oklahoma State. So I'm not picking, for, any particular bias or love or anything like that. I actually really like both of these teams. But right now, I'm picking Utah to win this one minus the 2 that they give us. I think they're the better team. I think Cam Rising is going to play and do a good job. And I think that this Utah team is the class of the Big 12 when Cam Rising is healthy. When Cam Rising is healthy, Utah is the class of the Big 12. And Oklahoma State, so far, they haven't shown me that they can overcome the other team trying to stop Ollie Gordon, at least in any significant way. I get it. They, stomped on Tulsa last week. Congrats. Like, you want a cookie? What are we talking about, right? It's Tulsa. And so, I'm optimistic that Oklahoma State's going to turn this around because that's what happens when the calendar turns to October. And I'm convinced that, they're going to go beat a couple teams maybe that people wouldn't expect them to down the stretch. And we might see this matchup again in a couple of months when it hits the Big 12 championship game. But right now, first round, I'm going to give it to Utah minus the 2 points. Cam Rising, I think, can have a nice bounce back day.
I am really interested to see the quarterback battle in this one. Alan Bowman has certainly put up a lot of yards. He's thrown for a number of touchdowns so far this season. Oklahoma State has the 8th best passing offense coming in through 3 weeks against Utah's 26th ranked passing defense. So good on good there. Again, I think it really comes down to who excels in the trenches. Statistically, the edge goes to Utah in the vast majority of these categories, but Oklahoma State is right behind them. You talk about third down efficiency. You talk about turnovers. You look at sacks and tackles for loss. They kind of flip back and forth, and one is always right behind the other. So the math really projects this one as a pick'em style game. Because of that, Oklahoma State, for whatever reason, finds ways to win these ranked matchups at home. Everything in me is really saying go with Utah. If you've got a healthy Cam Rising, go with the better unit in the trenches. Go with the better defense. I sure as heck am not buying stock in Oklahoma State's defense. But man, the Pokes find a way to defend their home field. So I'm going to take Oklahoma State plus the 2. It's not much candy, but I'll take it, and I'll ride with Oklahoma State. I do think Utah probably wins this game, but hey, if Oklahoma State finds a way to ride again, I look good either way. So
the funny thing about that, though, is, you get, big game Gundy, which, he seems to show up and just call an awesome game against these, top-ranked teams like you're mentioning. But this is still September Oklahoma State. So I guess we're going to see which curse wins out, right? We're going to have to see, is it going to be big game versus the September thing? Are they going to play well at the beginning of the year? Can Gundy find a way to, spark the, inspiration the right way, get them one win in September that matters? I don't know. It's going to be curious. I'm really interested to see where it goes.
All right, those are our 3Tech Big 3. We'd love to hear from you on Instagram, on Twitter, in our YouTube comments at 3Tech Pod. Let us know which side of these 3 games you've got. If you would have had a different game in these top 3, we'd love to hear from you. Continue the dialogue offline as well. Let's move into our Saturday storylines, Garrett, presented by Baller Pickleball. You can use our code 3TechPod for 10% off all of their merch. Trey has been leading that bandwagon for quite some time. 3TechPod, 10% off your entire first order. And we'll start in the morning slate. These are normally not listed in order of events. We typically bounce between the morning slate and the evening slate and everywhere in between, but this time it kind of works out to go in sequential order. So 2 games in the morning slate that we'll start off with. First of all, we'll go to Death Valley, where the Wolfpack have looked lost offensively all season long. They almost lost to Louisiana Tech last week. NC State's 2-1, a terrible loss to Tennessee, where they got blown off the field. Grayson McCall, who transfers up from Coastal Carolina, he has not been the Grayson McCall we fell in love with at Coastal Carolina so far. No. Really, he's looked out of sorts if he's thrown the ball more than 6 or 7 yards down the field. He's just not looked comfortable. That offense has been stuck in reverse for the first little bit of the season. In fact, CJ Bailey, the backup, came in and took over in that second half against the Bulldogs of Louisiana Tech last week, like I mentioned, in just a 10-point win. So with that as the background, Clemson, who was last seen dismantling Appalachian State 2 weeks ago, they're also off a bye. They are 20.5-point favorites in the 11 a.m. window. Which side of this contest are you backing?
I'm going to shout out Moose on this one. I'm with Clemson this week. I just like what they're doing right now. I think that they're the better team. They've got something to prove after getting stomped by Georgia week 1. So, it's kind of a, from this point on, I know that maybe the ACC doesn't look like it's much to reckon with right now. Obviously, Miami doing some good things down there, and nobody really else in that state is looking too particularly good right now. Obviously this is another one of those teams, NC State, a team that we thought was going to be pretty good, maybe challenge for, some kind of, late season push towards the ACC championship game. And it turns out, maybe not. Maybe they're just kind of little average team. Maybe they'll figure it out. Maybe, Grace McCall is going to figure out how to do that. And you're right about throwing the ball down the field. I looked it up. He's got under 6 air yards per attempt. He's just not really pushing the ball down the field this year. And so it's kind of hard to watch, right? We all kind of like Grayson McCall. We liked his, time at Coastal, and we thought he was going to transfer here and turn things around for the Wolfpack. Doesn't look like it is. And so, I'm gonna roll with Clemson on this one. I think they're going to win this one pretty big, make another big statement, and kind of kick off their ACC schedule with a resounding W to let everybody know that Clemson, they're back, they're here to stay, they're going to be all right.
And normally, I like to take this many points. I am loath to lay points in the vast majority of my picks against the spread, but this week I'm going to do it. I'm going to take Clemson minus the 20.5. I think the fact that they're off a bye week, I almost think that could potentially hurt them, maybe lull them to sleep after how quickly they caught fire against Appalachian State. But I also want to believe that Garrett Riley and Cade Klubnik found something 2 weeks ago, and they've been honing that craft as they prepare for ACC play in the Wolfpack this week. NC State has the 100th ranked passing defense. Their pass completion percentage isn't too terrible, 60%, but they're giving up a lot of chunk plays through the air. And you talk about getting some of those young wide receivers for Clemson going. Cade Klubnik gets in a rhythm. They're able to base the run off of that. I think this could be a situation where it gets out of hand very, very quickly for NC State. So I'll lay the points in this one as well.
And to that point, a big confidence week for Cade Klubnik, I think, here with, kind of a susceptible defense. He's kind of needed to figure it out. We've all been a little bit critical and a little bit harsh, I think, on Cade. But look, this is a chance to get your confidence up and say this is still a pretty quality opponent. And, maybe they're not as good as we thought they were, but it's still a good opponent. And you can go out there and maybe go hang a big number on him and get some of that offense rolling.
Let's go to the Sickos special in Stark Vegas. Garrett, I've termed this game must avoid TV. Of course, I'm talking about the Florida Gators, the Mississippi State Bulldogs, both off brutal losses last week. This is also in the morning window. Florida is 6-point favorites. Last I checked, this was bet down, I believe, inside 4, and then bet all the way back up to Florida -6. Still, the fact that the Florida Gators are less than a touchdown favorite against a team that just got massacred by a MAC team, a good MAC team, in Toledo, but still is concerning enough. We've talked about it up, down, sideways. Is it possible at all that Billy Napier could save his job with an impressive win, a blowout win, or do we really think that the administration is just kind of waiting for the bye week to give them a little extra time to figure out what their their deck chairs are going to look like.
Are you asking me if I think Billy Napier can save his job against Mississippi State?
Well,
I
yeah,
think
take that however you want.
Okay, I get it. Like you sit there, you say, as long as he's got the job, as long as he's not fired right now, I guess there's something he could do. I mean, I guess, you hang 100 on him or something like that, and you probably got to pause and go, okay, hold on. They might have tapped into something here. We should wait and see what they do next. Like, I guess. But look, you don't call meetings on Sunday mornings like that unless you've probably made the decision, or at least talked about the timeline, right? And talked about like, hey, we're going to do this, but we need to do it at this point in time because this is when the buyout decreases to a certain number, or this is like how quickly we can get the funds together in the right place, or whatever the situation is. So I think the writing's on the wall. I think it's set in stone. I think he's done. I actually, in this particular game, I know that nobody's really wanting to break this game down too much, but I actually have Mississippi State winning this game. I think that the Florida locker room is in absolute disarray. I think that obviously these players don't really want to play for this staff. You just got embarrassed on your home field, and you're getting booed off the field. You're getting, people booing Billy. I think I saw that like Billy Napier had like an ad up on the screen at halftime, and he got booed.
ESA.
And it was like, what is happening? This is so bizarre. And so, they just got embarrassed. And you can say the same thing about Mississippi State. They just got embarrassed by Toledo. The difference here, I think, is the Bulldogs have a little bit more belief in themselves and a little bit more pride to play for. Right now, I think Florida's just saying, like, yeah, we know that our coach is gone. Let's just get this over with, right? I don't think there's a lot of Florida players right now that believe in Billy Napier. And maybe you don't want to say that. Maybe that's completely out of line. And certainly none of them would say it publicly, right? Nobody would actually come out there and say, I don't believe in my head coach. But how much can you really believe in this guy when you know that this is a dead man walking? You know it's just a matter of time until he's gone. I think that this is a Stark Vegas special where Mississippi State just finds a way somehow. They bounce back after being embarrassed. They return a kickoff and surprise somebody. I don't know. I just think it's one of those things where they'll find a way to do it. Florida looked really bad, really undisciplined against Texas A&M. I think that they'll kind of continue that sort of path. And I actually do have the Mississippi State Bulldogs winning this one.
Yeah, DJ Douglas, man, the safety for Florida. It felt like in film study this week, every time you went back and looked at a big play that Texas A&M broke, DJ Douglas was the man responsible for the break, the missed tackle. A really tough look for the Gators on film.
Was
DJ
he
Lagway
starting on the wheel post combo?
He was on the wheel post. He was the player that got his ankle shattered by Marcel Reed. He missed another assignment on the first drive of the game. He missed a tackle actually.
Test that clip, man.
Yeah. So anyway, long week for the Gators in film study. No doubt about it. Bulldogs, for what it's worth, they gave up 41 points, almost 500 yards of offense to Toledo. So this may be the pillow fight of the SEC this season. ACC Mania kicks us off in the afternoon slate. Georgia Tech and Louisville. Number 19, Louisville, 10-point favorites versus Georgia Tech. They are at home. The over-under here is 57.5. And I've got two predictions here. Number one, I love the over here. Louisville and Georgia Tech haven't played that many times in the last 10, 15 years. But I went back and looked at each of those games, and every single one of those contests comfortably hits the over here. Offense is the statement, the known commodity in this series, and I'm going to ride with that. So I'll take the over. Georgia Tech also inexplicably has a thing for Louisville, other than what was the opener last year where Louisville almost blew it, but came back, found a way to win. Georgia Tech has controlled this series. So I know the Yellow Jackets are going on the road. I know the Yellow Jackets do not have the best pass defense, but I think the Jackets find a way to win this one outright. I'll take Georgia Tech plus the 10 points. And like I said, love the over 57.5 here.
I love it, man. I absolutely love it. I love being back on the Ramblin' Wreck with you. I like getting to hang out and just believe for some reason. And that's kind of fun. Georgia Tech's one of those teams that it's just a fun offense. It's fun to watch them play. I don't know that they necessarily win this game. I do think this thing smashes the over. I think that's, look, I'll go ahead and put it out there. This is not financial advice, but I do think it smashes the over. It's going to be a lot of points in this one. I don't know that they 100% are going to win this one. I don't feel super comfortable picking a winner just because anytime you do have this like high scoring shootout type thing, it's more of a who touches the ball last. So maybe ask me with 5 minutes left and let me see kind of where each team is on the field and if they're going to make one more play. But I do like Georgia Tech to keep this one pretty close. I think I'm going to go ahead and say Louisville wins this one. Just gets it done at home. They've looked pretty good as well. I mean, obviously they haven't really played anybody, so it's hard to say. But I just think they're going to keep this thing rolling. They're firing on all cylinders against nobody so far. So let's ratchet that up against a defense that isn't really that good. And let's just keep scoring a bunch of points.
I want to see how Louisville's defensive line contains the running game for the Yellow Jackets, both Haynes King and Jamal Haynes running the ball between the tackles. That'll be key for Louisville. They've got a lot of speed, and Tyler Shuck so far has looked very decent. He's got, I think, more composed talent around him than he did at Texas Tech, a little bit better offensive line, a veteran offensive line. So if Louisville is indeed going to win and cover with this, I think they pull away early from Georgia Tech. You let the Yellow Jackets hang around, though, and things get dangerous. I'm excited to watch that one. That one kicks off the afternoon slate, as does an SEC crossroads matchup on the Plains. Auburn hosting Arkansas. Both teams are 2-1. Auburn 3-point favorites as we record this on Wednesday night. Garrett Hank Brown looked competent against New Mexico. That's more than Peyton Thorne could say against a previous team from New Mexico. So points for the freshman there. For Auburn, they're taking on an Arkansas defense that I mentioned earlier, has the 7th best rushing defense in the country. They've been very physical in the trenches so far, but Arkansas also really struggled with UAB a week ago. They won 37-27. This game they were trailing UAB and the Blazers for quite some time in that one. I need to see consistency from Arkansas, and I need to see Auburn show the ability to control the line of scrimmage and get that ball to their playmakers out wide. If Auburn can win this game through the air and get it to the Cam Colemans on their staff, I think they win and cover comfortably against an Arkansas team that we had way more questions about than answers coming into this. On the other hand, though, Arkansas hadn't exactly laid down. Jaquindon Jackson has looked very good. Taylon Green at times has looked like the quarterback of the future in Fayetteville. Yeah. This is a very close game that I think goes back and forth. I think I tend to lean the home team here, but I've been impressed with Arkansas so far.
Yeah, for my money, this is going to be one of the more fun games to watch this week. I think you got to tune in and keep this one on the screen because this game just screams to me. And you look at some of the past and some of the history in this game, there's just going to be weird stuff happening in this game, right? There's going to be, weird turnovers, tipped interceptions, fumbles on the one type of thing. Like there's just going to be something weird that happens in this game that, we're going to be talking about it on the live show. And we're going to say, did you see when this happened? And, oh my gosh, that hit, or they had a weird targeting penalty that got overturned or something like that. There's going to be something weird that happens in this game. You just got to believe it. And I think that this is one where neither team is going to really come out and dominate this game. I think both teams are going to do a lot of things well. I do believe in Taylon Green. I do believe in Jaquindon Jackson. I think they're both going to have some success. And so I think Arkansas is going to put some points up, but I think I'm going to lean Auburn in this one. I like what Hank Brown did. I think that's going to be just more reps, more chances for him to kind of get better. I don't think it's going to look good the entire time, but I think he's going to make some plays, and I think he's going to keep Auburn fans thinking, hey, this kid, he can do something, right? This might be the guy that can turn the season around a little bit, help us, get back where we think we should be. I think he's a big deal for Auburn, and I think that this is, if you can just get the quarterback position right, it feels like Auburn could actually make some noise this year and maybe, threaten a little bit. So I think get him some more reps, play Arkansas. You get this one at home, so it's a little extra helpful. I think I'm going to lean Auburn in this one, but there's going to be some weird stuff that happens in those. It's not going to be a very straightforward game. There's going to be weird turnovers and bizarre plays and busted coverages and a trick play and everything else.
Let's go to Lubbock now to take on Arizona State and the Red Raiders of Texas Tech. The Red Raiders are favorites in this game. -3 is the current line. They just blew out North Texas a week ago. Arizona State is by far the more complete team in this matchup, though. They beat Texas State, a very good Texas State team, for those that didn't watch on Thursday night, in a close one, but looked complete on both sides of the ball. I put this out on Twitter earlier this week. I was wondering, why is Texas Tech favored in this game when yeah, of course they stopped North Texas, but before that, they were really having trouble stopping anybody.
Yeah, and like, yeah, don't look at the results before. Because was it Abilene Christian that they barely beat, or
Yes.
I think that was the one. I couldn't remember if it was them or Tarleton, but Purple School that's out in that little portion of Texas went up to Lubbock and almost beat them. Look, I mean, this is not a Tech team that I necessarily believe in right now. It's definitely a Tech team that can put up points. They can score. That's not a question. But Arizona State, obviously, I think has been really impressive. The thing I like about them is, obviously they can kind of take the air out of the ball and just kind of run it. They got the running game going, and they showed that in a really impressive win against Texas State. They did a really good job just kind of saying, we're going to come into your house. It's, wild environment, people going crazy. But we're going to run the football, and even if we get down, and even if we, get a pretty big deficit that we got to come back from, we're going to play our game. We're going to run the football, and we're going to catch back up. And they did it on some big plays, too. Like, they had a couple big shots over the top, which I was surprised about, honestly. I mean, hitting big plays over the top, not something I thought Arizona State was going to do against Texas State, but they found a way. Give me Arizona State to do it again another time. Just walk into their house, run the football, maybe hit a couple of bombs, and we'll turn this thing around. We'll get another dub for Arizona State.
I'm very interested to see if Baron Morton can keep control of the football. He looked really good slinging it around against North Texas last week. I think if the Red Raiders are to cover, first of all, Taj Brooks has to stay healthy. They are much more likely to win and cover statistically when Taj Brooks is toting the rock. He's one of the best running backs in the country, very, very consistent. And the Red Raiders' chances just go up exponentially if he's not banged up, which he was earlier in the season. I believe returned healthy last week. Arizona State, what I am concerned about is if this does turn into a tortilla slinging fiesta, can their offense keep up? They want to take the air out of the ball with Cam Scattaboo, who has done an excellent job of that through their first 3 weeks. But if Texas Tech is having success on offense, how does Arizona State accommodate for that? That, I think, is what I'm going to be watching for Saturday afternoon in Lubbock. I do lean the Sun Devils, though. They are the more complete team, the better defense. Defense travels on the road. So I'll go with Arizona State if I'm forced to make a pick on this one. We go from West Texas now to North Texas, where it's going to be 96 degrees, and we have a 4 p.m. kick for a sizzling battle of the Iron Skillet. TCU and SMU both coming off of really disappointing losses, both at home the previous week. SMU blew it against BYU in what should have been, according to a lot of people, a very winnable first Power 4 game of the season. Mm-hmm. TCU, on the other hand, blew a 21-point second-half lead to the UCF Knights, who, by the way, are now the odds-on favorite per the ESPN Football Power Index to win the Big 12. Interesting note there. This game comes down to TCU's electric offense, Josh Hoover slinging the ball for 400 yards a game versus an SMU defense that's inside the top 15 through their first 3 weeks. Garrett, we were there. We saw the quarterback controversy at SMU. They've since named Kevin Jennings as the starter on the Hilltop. The issue is that Kevin Jennings has a sub 500% completion percentage when he's throwing the ball.
Yeah, he really hasn't shown that much. He's obviously mobile. He can avoid the blitz, which is good. That's something that really Preston Stone was not able to do. If you brought pressure, and that's what BYU was so successful at, bringing pressure, then that's wraps, right? That's it for them. Preston Stone wasn't getting out of it. So being able to extend play is definitely where Jennings succeeds. But yeah, you're right. Like, he's just not finding the receivers once he gets there. He's got more in the running game. He can definitely run a little bit more, so that's good. But I think he's probably the guy that gives them the best chance to win right now. But this is not the SMU offense I think any of us expected to see. This is a very disappointing version of what SMU's offense I think still can be, but just clearly is not right now. They haven't found it. They haven't found their rhythm. Maybe they can get that right against TCU, who doesn't seem like they really have that killer instinct, right? Hoover's been putting up insane video game numbers so far, but his problem is his team isn't helping him out and not really getting him where he needs to go. So, there's no killer instinct there right now. TCU doesn't really know how to win games at the moment, right? They haven't been able to do that. They've won a couple of games, obviously, but you see it when you play those better games, right? You play a UCF who's not necessarily a dominant team, and it's, by the way, side note, hilarious that they're favorites to win the Big 12 now, and that I would assume at that point make the playoff with the bye, right? That's kind of a funny world where you could say, it's like the Padme meme where it's like, oh, the team from Florida is going to get that first round bye, right? And everyone thinks it's Florida State, but it's UCF. That would be so bizarre to see in this version of college football. But I am rooting for it now. No, it's really, for me, this is just a who doesn't mess it up more game between TCU and SMU. It's going to be whoever makes those critical mistakes probably ends up costing the team the game. I don't really believe in either defense right now. SMU's defense, obviously better. I don't really think that BYU is that dominant of an offense. I don't know that. I think those stats might be slightly inflated. I think TCU is going to move the ball just fine on SMU. I think SMU is going to move the ball better against TCU. Just don't make mistakes. I don't have a great read on this one. I think I'd probably lean TCU and just believe in Josh Hoover a little bit more right now, but this one wouldn't shock me either way.
BYU, just for the record, top 40 total offense through 3 weeks. So
okay.
I'll give SMU a little bit of credit there.
You're right. BYU is dominant.
This comes down to turnovers for me. That's what sunk SMU's ship last week. Penalties and turnovers before the bye, I should say. And yeah, the Ponies just have to make sure that they're not turning this one over. I think TCU is the better team. They're certainly the more explosive team. A couple of years ago when Trey and I went to this game, we said exactly this, that SMU has to limit those chunk plays. They have to be able to stop the run. SMU did neither of those things on that day. I do think they're better equipped to be able to stop the run, and their cornerbacks are certainly of a better caliber to hang with Jack Besh and the weapons that TCU has out wide. But in the end, I do start to lean with the experience and the depth of TCU, certainly on offense a little bit more. So I'll go with the Frogs on the road to get this one done as well. Final game to break down in full, number 8, Miami. Tricky road spot this week against South Florida, who just announced that they are less than a month away from breaking ground on their own home stadium. That's exciting, and really looking forward to the Bulls having their own stadium. I believe it's going to be on campus too. South Florida, surprising defensive success rate. And I think that takes into account, obviously, how dominant they were against Alabama through the first 3.5 quarters of that game. Now, we know it got away. The final score, not indicative of how that game actually went. But the Bulls have had a decent amount of success on defense, which I think it would have been the thing that you would have discounted the Bulls with. For me, if Byron Brown can move the ball against a Miami defense that really hasn't been tested at all this season. I mean, they put Florida in their place. They haven't played anyone of note since. I think USF can cover this line. I think the line is Miami minus 17.5, something like that. 16 and a half.
Yeah.
16.
I think it's coverable. I don't know that they can do it. This is not me doubting USF in this case. I think that they're a good team, and I think if they can move the ball, they'll be able to kind of keep it close. But look, Miami, I think, is just on a different level right now. Cam Ward, what a revelation, right? Just they hit on Cam Ward in the portal. They absolutely crushed that. If I'm reading all of this right, leading the ACC and all sorts of statistics right now, passing yards, passing touchdowns, yards per attempt, air yards per attempt, 13.6 air yards per attempt right now for Cam Ward. Just a dumb number right there. And I think the most important right now, most touchdown passes currently in college football at 11. He's off to a hot start. He's lighting it up. I think he's going to keep doing it. And this is not me doubting USF. I think this is a good program. Definitely a top 3 program in the state of Florida right now. I have no doubt about that. But yeah, this is just an unfortunate spot for them, having to play the best team in Florida, a team that's probably on its way to the playoff. And if not, at least on its way to the ACC championship game. Give me Miami in this one. Give me the points. I like USF. I just don't think that they're going to be able to cover it.
I am concerned that USF can't hold this late. If they're going to cover, I think it's going to be, forcing a couple of turnovers early. I think it's going to be Byron Brown leading some either long drives or maybe a big chunk play, early scores that throws Miami off balance. Remember, we like the talent that Miami has, but I still haven't had a chance to really analyze the coaching validity or upgrades that Miami has. There were several instances in that Miami-Florida game where if it was closer, I felt like Miami mismanaged the game situation a little bit. So can South Florida hang around to put Miami in those positions where all of a sudden you're having to rely on Mario Cristobal to make the right move? I don't know. I want to believe that because I want this to be an entertaining game. I do think I would take Miami to cover, maybe cover late, but I want to see how Byron Brown does against an in-state rival. This will be a ton of fun, and I'll certainly keep my eye on that one. That rounds out our Saturday storyline. So, of course, here at the closing of the show, we go to the Turbo offense. And, Garrett, we start with the Calgorithm, baby. They have taken over Twitter. They are invading Woke Walker Stadium, as they are calling it this week. My headline for this game, and I just put out a research gem over on Twitter that has to deal with efficiency on 3rd and 4th down. I'm calling it. Cal sends Florida State to 0-4 this week, and the game that Trey, my brother, and I will be in attendance at next week will be a little bit of a funeral, I think, after SMU and Florida State both lose.
You're probably right. And look, I love what Cal's been doing online. It's been so much fun to watch. It's just been absolute insanity in the meme game. So shout out Cal for that. I will be ordering a home field shirt for Cal very soon because I have overnight become a little bit more of a fan of this program than I was a week ago. But yeah, this is a bad spot for Florida State. This is a poorly mismanaged, program in collapse. Florida State's in a bad spot right now. And I don't know if it's just because they hitched their wagon to DJU. At a certain point, I think you got to start looking around and saying, like, okay, great, DJU isn't the guy. What are you doing about it, Norvell? Like, what's happening? You can't let your team go 0-4 to start the season. I don't care who your quarterback is. If you're Florida State, you can't start 0-4. And so, look, it's a sucky situation for them right now. They're in a bad spot. But this is on you. This is on your program. Cal, I think, is going to kind of roll in this one and give us all the memes that we wanted. And yeah, you're right. It's probably going to be a pretty sad scene when they roll into Dallas for that SMU game and they're not a very good team and might be heading to 0-5.
The Cal defense is particularly effective through three weeks on early down. So 1st and 2nd down, limiting positive plays and forcing negative plays. Conversely, Florida State, who's not good on any down this season, is especially terrible on early downs. And then it doesn't get that much better on 3rd and 4th down. DJU is 93rd in 3rd down efficiency this season. I don't expect many points from the Seminoles again this week.
Surprised he's that good.
Yeah, it's not been good for Florida State. I had a hunch that Cal's defense was going to be a lot better this season. They're not great necessarily, but they have taken a big step forward from what we saw last season. So I think Cal up to 4-0. I think they're undefeated. Florida State in the cellar at 0-4 as they lose an ACC game to Cal. Minnesota, as we go up north to the Big Ten, quietly has not allowed a point since they lost their season opener to North Carolina. They host Iowa this week. Iowa 2.5-point favorites on the road. Max Brosmer seemed to figure a couple things out against lesser competition, but throwing the football much more effectively. I believe Minnesota has a healthy running game as well for this week. I wouldn't have an official position of any sort of financial or monetary value on this game, but I will say Gophers are in a really fun upset spot with Iowa rolling into town, especially after Iowa showed that they can be mortal against Iowa State.
Now, the question obviously is, do they give up a point this week, right? I mean, this is still an Iowa offense. It's improved, but not that much. I mean, it's better, obviously, but it's not like Iowa's, the leading offense of the nation or, all of a sudden masterminds throwing up points all over the place. So, obviously I think Iowa probably scores, but really cool to see what Minnesota's been doing. If I had any position in this, I'd probably take the under. I don't know what the number is for the under right now, but if I had any position in this, I'd say, yeah, go ahead and take that under. This is going to be one of those just nice, ugly, old Shadow Realm games. Obviously the conference divisions have disappeared, but that's a Shadow Realm classic right here with Minnesota and Iowa just playing a defensive shutdown. Give me like a 9-6 final in this one. That feels like what this game deserves.
Yeah, the over-under is 35.5. Darius Taylor is healthy for Minnesota. He had 2 scores, caught another one against Nevada in their 27-0 shutout last week. Interesting look-ahead spot for both of these teams. Iowa has Ohio State the following week, and Minnesota will catch the Wolverines. So certainly favors, I think, Minnesota in this scenario. Listen, again, extended family, they're Hawkeyes, they bleed black and gold. I'm not going to pick against Iowa again on purpose this season, but I'm just saying I like the Golden Gophers at home.
Got to keep the good graces, right?
That's right. That's all I'm going to say. I like the Golden Gophers at home in this situation. They're not my upset of the week, though. My upset of the week, Rutgers plus 5.5. I actually saw when I checked the run sheet or the college football schedule before we hit record, this game, I believe, was a touchdown favorite in favor of Virginia Tech when the line opened. It is all the way down to 3.5 in favor of the Hokies. So the public pouring in money on Rutgers. It's not hard to see why. Virginia Tech has not exactly been stellar offensively this year. And oh, by the way, they have the 114th ranked rush defense this season. Kyle Monaghy might go absolutely hog wild against the Hokies. I'm taking the Scarlet Knights outright in this one.
Love the pick. It's awesome. Rutgers with the top 10 scoring offense right now. Yeah, if you don't have a very good defense and Rutgers can score points, yeah, I'm rolling with you on that one. That's fun.
Athan Kelly McManus, I doubted him.
He's been good. On. Like he's not been like great, but he's been good. He's driving the boat. Yep.
He's looked serviceable. So I'll take Rutgers plus the candy. I'll call him to win outright. Michigan State, interesting road game against Boston College. Raise your hand if you had Michigan State undefeated at this point in the season. I don't think I did. They're 3-0. Boston College is 2-1. A very impressive game against Missouri in that they found a way to hang around. Trey and I talked about on the live show afterwards. I really couldn't believe that they had kept it as close as they did, given some of the statistical breakdowns. But Boston College is 6.5-point favorites at home. This is the red bandana game. They'll be wearing those special edition jerseys to honor one of their alumni, Wells Crowther, who passed away in the 9/11 tragedy. Over under on this game is only 46.5. So Vegas is telling you expect a defensive minded game. I believe a little bit more in what Boston College has going for them offensively. Aiden Childs has been a little up and down this season. And even though Michigan State has taken leaps and bounds forward defensively, I'm going to go with Bill O'Brien to throw a wrinkle into the game plan at home that's paid off for me each of the first 3 weeks. So why bite the hand that feeds you?
You're right about that. I think, Boston College probably going to run the football pretty effectively. And, look, it's a fun story, Michigan State being 3-0. I think that has to kind of run out. I think ultimately they're not going to be better than their talent ultimately for too much longer. Could be a little bit of an upset spot for BC, coming off of that big matchup, a little bit emotionally draining, maybe, feeling a little bit disappointed that you feel like you could have had that one and just kind of gave it up. But I think ultimately they're probably a good enough team to go ahead and win this one. So, I'm going to rock with BC as well.
Advanced Analytics has Michigan State being favored in this one. So I'm going against the math here. But
suck it, nerds. We know what we're talking about.
I'll go with the eye test, and I want to believe in Bill O'Brien at home. So we'll roll with that. Final game on the docket, number 13, Kansas State playing at altitude, a spicy late night game against the BYU Cougars. This is the 9:30 game Central Time on ESPN. So while you're watching our live show on Saturday night, maybe have this one on another screen. We certainly will here at 3 Tech HQ. Kansas State minus 6.5. Last I checked, they looked really good against Arizona, but playing up in Utah at altitude, not easy. BYU is pretty tough at home traditionally.
Yeah, and I think this is also like a special uniform game for BYU as well. I think they're doing like some kind of icy whites or something like that. Like I might be wrong about that, but I thought I saw that online. So I'm gonna say this is giving all of the this is all the trappings of a buzzsaw game for Kansas State, right? They're coming out of a tough matchup, and they're going up to altitude. They're playing a BYU team who they should probably beat. But this BYU team is confident. I think, 3-0, playing decent football. I still don't understand how they have that good of a statistical offense like we talked about earlier. I even looked at some of the numbers. It's not like they're really lighting it up. I guess just playing good team football, moving the ball, scoring. Yeah, I don't think BYU wins this game, but this is, I mean, every piece of this is a buzzsaw game for Kansas State. They're going to have to prove at some point. And look, I said this, in the recap last week. They're going to have to at some point prove they can throw the football more effectively. It's not like Avery Johnson's been bad. He just hasn't really been dynamic. I think in order to win the Big 12, he's going to have to be at some point. But they are currently running the experiment of no, he doesn't, right? They're trying to see if they can just run him 15, 20 times a game and not have to make him be a dynamic passer. I think he's going to have to pass the ball a little bit better in this one to win this game. I think BYU's got a good enough defense that if he isn't willing to go in there, pass the ball a little bit effectively down the field, then it's going to be an issue for them overall. So I think Kansas State wins this one, but this is one to watch for sure.
Yeah, I'll take Kansas State to win, BYU to cover. I think this is a fun late night game. I think Kansas State eventually finds a way to wear down BYU on the road. But, we'll see. They played a lot of zone defense against SMU. Maybe that allows them to keep more guys closer to the box, help stop that run, and make Avery Johnson go over the top to beat them. All right, that's our turbo offense. That's the show. That's all I got on my run sheet. I'm excited for week 4. We're really, really looking forward to, especially I think the afternoon and the evening windows. The morning's a little bit slow, so if you got things to do on the Saturday, I would definitely say go to brunch, paint the spare bedroom, whatever you need to do the weed eating, mow the lawn, early Saturday morning. Get to a TV for the afternoon, the evening slate, and let's have a Saturday, huh?
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be another good week. It's, last week a little bit lighter on the slate, still good, but this one, bunch of good matchups. Should be an awesome Saturday.
All right. Well, for Garrett Turney, I'm Mitch Mason. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. We invite you, of course, to hang out with the live show. Leave us a like, a review, comment, subscribe. You know what to do at this point. And we are excited to have you as a part of the Jimmies and the Joes. For Garrett Turney, I'm Mitch Mason. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Until Saturday night in the live show, so long, everybody.
Gracious him. How about